Hi everyone, Emily here, and today I have for you my April 2023 wrap up. And they say third time's the charm. This is my third time trying to film this. First time I got interrupted by maintenance. My toilet was not flushing this morning and it's been broken all day. Fun times. Then I tried filling it again, and I had two stacks of books next to me and they both went crashing down as soon as I picked up my first book. So third time's the charm, right? All right, so this is April 2023 wrap up. Just some stats here. I had 14 reads. 8 were new to me, 5 were rereads, 4 were audiobooks, and I did have one DNF. I did read a total of 5,145 pages, I believe. 5,100 for sure. It's the last two digits I'm not 100% sure on. My spreadsheet that I'm going to kind of look to the side, you'll see me doing that to refresh my memory of the star readings. For some reason, my spreadsheet that I purchased off of Etsy, it does not calculate like the hours listened to into the monthly counts when I enter it in my books read. For some reason, I don't know why it does that. So I just go by pages read overall for every single book. That being said, let's just get started. So first, I did DNF Wayward by Amelia Hart, which has me really disappointed. The book is gorgeous. I did get this on the recommendation of someone during the BookTube like Besties virtual reading retreat. Someone recommended this to me, and I started reading it. And it starts off, there's a lot of trigger warnings for this book, and you know one right away for domestic abuse. It's pretty much out there. And then there was a scene where the modern character is looking at some things in her great aunt's home, and she's like, oh, the desk drawer is locked. Like she was trying to hide something. Well, sometimes people are hiding things not to keep secrets, but because like it's confidential information and it needs to be locked, or it's something valuable and it needs to be locked away from thieves. So it kind of irritated me that we're trying to create tension. We're trying too hard to create tension. In addition, I did, after reading that, I said, let's just look some more into the trigger warnings. So I looked them up, and there was one trigger warning, and there's a lot of trigger warnings for this book, so please keep that in mind. And there was one trigger warning that when I read it, I was like, I can't read a book with that trigger warning. I couldn't. So DNF, which is too bad because it really is such a gorgeous cover. Then it was the month of Abby Jimenez for me. So I read every single book that she has written. The first book that I read was The Friend Zone, and I gave this 4.5 stars. I read this for a book club. The members of my book club, when we discussed it last night, they had a lot more issues with it than I did. There were some issues with Kristen, the main character that they had. I will say this, I did not like how she handled the infertility plotline. So Kristen does have PCOS, and that impacts her ability to potentially conceive a child and then carry it to full term. And so because of that, she is very hesitant into developing a relationship with Josh. And I did really like Josh a lot. I did like Kristen a lot and their banter back and forth. But there are some other reasons that I don't want to get into too much for spoilery reasons that people did not like it. I did like this though. It's a nice read, and I appreciated the fact that infertility was discussed and PCOS was discussed, having a close friend of mine who struggled with it. And I did give this 4.5 stars. Then I also read the Happy Ever After playlist, which follows Sloane from the previous book. I gave this book 4 stars only because the romantic, and I don't want to go, I can't go into it too much, but there is a trope in here that it doesn't work well for me, and so that's why I gave it 4 stars. I still appreciated the banter back and forth between the two main characters. And then I read Life's Too Short, which is the 3rd book in the Friend Zone trilogy. And so this follows Vanessa, who is an Instagrammer, and what is his name? I forgot his name. Adrian Copeland, who lives next door. He is a lawyer. And what I did not like about this book, one, it irritates me when, like, people are wealthy off of Instagram or YouTube. So that, because and maybe it's because I know in the booktube community, so many people that I've watched videos on, they're like, we're not making money off of this. And she does more lifestyle Instagram. So maybe there's more money in it. I don't know. It does irritate me, the trope. And then also, there was a medical decision that she made that I did not care for and I did not like. It was her decision to make, but I think it would have solved a lot of conflict had she made a different choice. Then I reread Part of Your World, which I read this last year. I still loved it, 4.5 stars. And this follows, I can't remember names. I have a bad headache right now, so I apologize. So this follows Alexis Montgomery, and she gets a flat tire in a small town, and she meets Daniel Grant, and they develop a May-December relationship, and she's the older, by 10 years, and is coming out of a verbally abusive relationship and is hesitant to develop this relationship with Daniel. I, again, love the banter, really liked him. I thought he was delightful, and 4.5 stars. And then lastly, I read Yours Truly, which is the second book in the Part of Your World series. This came out in April. Loved it. It follows Brianna Ortiz. She's an ER doctor, friends with Alexis, and she's coming, her divorce is getting finalized. She's got a brother who has an autoimmune disease, and because of that, his kidneys are failing, and he needs a donor. I was kind of running out of time with that. And she also is trying to become the head of the ER. And in comes Dr. Jacob Maddox, and they just kind of meet and they clash pretty quickly. And he decides to send her a letter. And so they develop this relationship back and forth between letters. And I love this book. I loved, he struggles with anxiety. I love the fact that this time it is the male lead who has the anxiety. I feel like too often in romance novels, it's usually the female who has, the mental health issues, and that I like the fact that it was him and how he has learned how to cope with it, sometimes positively, sometimes he really struggles with it. But I really liked this book, 4.5 stars. Then I'm going to kind of go in order now. So then I read Pattern Master by Octavia E. Butler. I wasn't planning on reading this year, but I read it because I was part of the Keymark TBR Blitz readathon, and this was 201 pages, and the rule for the readathon was it had to be more than 200 pages, and I was like, I'm not sure how many books I'm going to get to off of my TBR, because it was only fantasy or sci-fi that we could read. And so I threw this in because I knew it would be a quick, easy read. Easy meaning like quick. And it was. I enjoyed it. It was wild. Just so you're aware, there is inbreeding and incest. And I think the reason why it reminded me of like ancient Egypt. So in ancient Egypt culture, brother and sister would marry to keep the ruling line within the family. And it reminded me of that, not that we're in ancient Egypt, we're in this futuristic world on Earth, but it reminded me of that in that these are people with special abilities where they can like read people's minds, and so they're trying to keep that ability within the same family and the same like kind of ruling class. So that's why that reminded me of that. And then there are others who do not have those abilities. And so we've got these two brothers who are kind of against each other, but one is more powerful than the other, and who is going to become the next in line for power. This is Octavia E. Butler's debut novel. However, within the realm of this series, this does not come first chronologically. And my rating for this book, hold on, let me pull up my spreadsheet. I honestly don't remember. I think this was a 4-star. Yeah, this is a 4-star read. I didn't enjoy it as much as Kindred, but I enjoyed it and want to know more about this world. The next book I read, which I absolutely adored, was The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. And I gave it 4.5 stars, and I don't know why. I feel like I should have given this 5 stars. I loved this book. Super cute. This is by Megan Bannon, The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. So it follows Hart Walston, who is a marshal in this like fantasy world, but he's kind of like a Western, and he's hunting these creatures who are like zombies. And then there's Mercy Birdsall, and she is an undertaker for her family's business. And so Hart has to bring like the dead bodies of these zombies that he kills to her. And they butt heads. They are enemies. And then one day he decides to send a letter to a friend. And it ends up being delivered to Mercy. And they develop this pen pal relationship, but they just write to each other as a friend. This was so delightful, such a fast read. If you love You've Got Mail, this is You've Got Mail set in a fantasy world. I mean, like literally like straight scenes up from You've Got Mail played out in a fantasy world. So good. So good. And the cover is just beautiful. All right. Then the next book I read, I don't have a copy of it. Or the next 2 books I'm going to talk about, I don't have copies of. I listened to them. So one was A Very Merry Bromance, and clearly I did such a great job listening to it because I don't remember our main characters' names. I think one was like Carson, or starts with a C. He's a country singer. Gretchen, who is a lawyer. She is an immigration lawyer, and her family owns like a whiskey business, and they want the country singer star to be part of like their advertising for their label. And so she's tasked with seeing if he'll sign on to advertise their whiskey label. And he agrees to do it, but he says, I'll do this, but I need you to date me. Because he's interested in her. It was okay. It was not my favorite of them. Again, I'm not a big fan of like country superstar or like superstar singer, superstar actor, superstar whatever as a main character in a romance novel. I just am not. It's just not a trope that works well for me. Also, there are some things that are revealed about Gretchen and her childhood, major trigger warning, and it's horrifying. Like, it's horrifying, and I don't feel like that portion was dealt with well. So, I gave that 3.5 stars. The next book I listened to was Forsaking All Others by Lavril Spencer. And I grew up in like high school, college reading Lavril Spencer. I've read pretty much everything that she's written. There's a couple of novels that I've not read. So I've been kind of re-listening to them to see like, do they stand the test of time? Because she wrote primarily in the early 80s. No, I was not in high school in the early 80s. I was in high school in the early 90s, so I'm not that old. Sorry, I should not say that old. I should say, I I just was not in high school in the early 80s. Sorry, please forgive me if I offended anyone. I don't mean to. I'm really tired. At any rate, Forsaking All Others. This novel, our main character, I can't remember her name either. This is terrible. Clearly I did a great job. I gave it 3.5 stars. And now I need to not find out who the main character is. I just completely blanked on it. Oh, and I almost confused it with another book. So this one, our main character, she owns a she owns a photography business, and she is Allison Scott. Holy cow! Sorry, folks. So Allison Scott, she owns a photography business, and she is hired on to do a photo shoot for like the cover of a romance novel, and she has been burned by an ex-boyfriend, Jason, who was one of her models, and he leaves her. So she's kind of got her defenses pretty high, and she meets a new model named Rick Lang in doing this photo shoot for a romance novel cover, and he is very attractive, and it brings her to mind things from Jason. So she does not trust him. But Rick Lang, he's a darling sweetheart of a man. And of course they fall in love, but she just has all of these defenses up because of her previous relationship. Some of the things that I did not like, there is some fat shaming in it, and some outdated ideas of women's roles. Like it's not big, but it's clear like women should stay at home. It was just kind of, or like women staying at home. There was like a comment about that, and it was like, okay. So clearly dated, and yeah, I just didn't like how she treated him. So that's why I only gave that 3.5 stars. Then I read, sorry, going back to my spreadsheet. The world is truly Spring Fancy. Aha. Then I listened to Spring Fancy, another reread from LaVerle Spencer. Again, I listened to this. And this followed, and this one, I don't know if I gave it 3 stars. If I did, okay. This one I gave 2 stars. Sorry, I don't have the book. So, Spring Fancy follows Winifred Gardner, and she is engaged to be married to a man, and I don't remember, Paul. And she's engaged to be married to Paul. Winifred Gardner is a physical therapist. She enjoys like physical activity and into sports. She is going to stand up at her best friend's wedding. And at the rehearsal dinner, she meets a man named Joseph Duggan, who is a mechanic at a body shop. Winifred Gardner, however, is engaged to marry Paul, who is like in computers and trying to is working a lot of hours because he just bought this house and wants to provide a wonderful home for Winnie. And there's instant attraction between her and Joseph Duggan. And there's even a point where, spoiler alert here, she sleeps with Joseph Duggan while still engaged to Paul. And I had major problems with that. Because she still is engaged to Paul, and I didn't think that was fair of her to do to Paul. Like, if you find yourself attracted and falling and developing feelings for another man, then you need to communicate that and potentially break it off. So that's why I gave that 2 stars. Then I read Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 2 in the Mistborn Era 2. I gave this 4 stars. This is going to be weird. It's a really hot take. I did not enjoy this as much as Alloy of Law. Here's why. I think partly this suffered because this month was just a hard reading month for me. One, I think because I had read so much for, I can't even remember the readathon that I did. Holy cow, bad headache. For a previous readathon in March, that I read so much that I was kind of beginning to feel a little burnt out. 2, I was also beginning to feel kind of pressured to read. So I was working really hard to getting all of my books in for the Keymark TBR Blitz. And I know everyone was really kind. Everyone on my team was really kind of like, whatever you can contribute, it's okay, it's okay. But I was like, I want to get all 5 books in. So I kept flipping around books on my TBR. And so I think that also is another reason why it suffered. And also it was just a stressful month at work. And so I had a hard time concentrating. So all of these things impacted how I felt about this book. This was not a bad book. It just, my life circumstances worked against this book. It did have me going, whoa, there are some things that we learn that I was like, whoa. Steris, I still really am wanting to like Steris. Steris is Wax's fiance, and I really, really want to like her, and I don't have enough of her. Like, I want her to be developed more as a character. There was a moment at the end of this book that I was like, it was heartbreaking and moving, and like, I love her for it, and love her for what she did, and heartbroken for her, and I want more for Steris. Like, I want more development of Steris, because I think that she would be a really wonderful character. And so that's kind of why it got knocked down. Then I read Deadbeat, and this was a book that I wasn't originally planning on reading, but I had to do some switching around in my TBR, and so I flopped out Way of Adan. I'm halfway through Way of Adan, and the prose and where my mind is were not connecting. Nothing wrong with Way of Adan, but I needed to pause that book for a while. So I read, this is book 7 in the Dresden Files, and this involves where he is trying to go after necromancers. So we've got necromancers in this book. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite as perfect as I like it to, because there are some things that I was like, wait, how did we get here? And that could have been my fault again. Really struggling with concentration on books this month. But we met a new character that I absolutely love. I love Butters, the character, and Poca will never die. Poca will never die. There's also some really fascinating reveals about Harry that I cannot go into, but Harry and how it relates to his powers and some implications that could happen further along the line. And so that's one of the reasons why I really like this book, is there are some really good implications. And there's also, I'm looking forward to reading more of Dresden Files. And then I read The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. And I was not planning on reading this book either. I read this book in like 3 days though. Again, this was 4 days. A good chunk of it I read yesterday. This was again a switch out for the TBR Blitz. I needed a debut author, and this is Joe Abercrombie's first published book. And I really enjoyed this book as well. I gave it 4.5 stars. Again, there are some things where I was like, wait, how did we get here? Again, I think some of it was because my brain was just kind of distracted. One thing that I did not like, there's a point of view with Dogman. Like that point of view, I was just like, I am not getting it. But Glokta, I love Glokta. I cannot believe that I'm saying I love a torturer, but I love a torturer. Glokta is amazing. I love him. This was his book. And as I was reading it, I was like, man, if this were Winnie the Pooh, Glokta would be the Eeyore of the group because he's just so depressed. Understandably so. When you meet him and you see what his life has become, understandably why he's depressed. So I enjoyed Glokta. I also really enjoy Logan Ninefingers. There's something about him that is revealed later in the book that I'm like, am I reading that right? And I'm hoping I did. And if I did, it's a fascinating implication. I cannot wait to see what Abercrombie does with that. Ferrero is a character that I'm fascinated by. So he does some really good. I mean, these characters are for sure not as complex as Robin Hobb's characters. Again, Robin Hobb has 16 books to develop and grow these characters, but these are memorable characters. And yes, he has 500 pages to build memorable characters, but they are like, I'm not going to forget Glokta. Like, you're not going to forget Glokta. You're not going to forget Logan Ninefingers. You're not going to forget Baez. You're not going to forget these characters. Whereas some of the other books that I read, I'm like, who is that again? I'm not going to forget who these characters are. And that is awesome. The last book that I read, I don't have a copy of because I listened to it on audio, and that would be Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. And it was delightful. I gave it 4.5 stars. I had no 5-star books this month, but Thank You for Listening is a romance novel, and it is about an audio narrator who named Swanee, and she was in an accident. You learn more about the accident, but because of the accident, she lost one of her eyes and wears an eye patch, and she narrates audiobooks, and she primarily does more literary fiction, women's literature. She started her career out originally as an actress. Then when her accident happened, she made a switch to audiobooks. She started in audiobooks and romance, and now is in literary fiction and kind of is like, oh, romance novels. Like that's, the typical stereotypes that are involved with romance novels. But she is going to a romance novel conference, and there she meets someone, and they meet and they connect, and then they have one night stand, and then they leave. Meanwhile, she also has a grandmother who used to be an actress in Hollywood, and her grandmother has dementia, and that is progressively getting worse and taking its toll on her grandmother. And so she's having to deal with that, and also come up with the extra money to take care of her grandmother, who needs more supports to keep her safe. But that costs money. So because of that, she agrees to narrate an audiobook series. It's like, well, it's not an audiobook series. It's like more of a series of podcasts, I guess, that come out like every week. That the author that she originally started off with had requested that she take on this project after she had passed away. So Swanee agrees to do that so that way she can have money to support her grandmother. I really enjoyed the novel. I really enjoyed Julie Whelan as a narrator. Julie Whelan herself used to be an actress, and now is an author and an audiobook narrator. What I did not like is it's primarily set in LA, and there is a part that once it makes a shift to a different location outside of LA, and I'm not going to share where that is. I don't want to spoil anything. Once it made that shift, that's when I felt like the book kind of suffered. So that's why I did not give it 5 stars. If that hadn't happened, it would have been a 5-star read. At any rate, those are all the books that I read. Sorry this is longer than I thought it was going to be. I apologize for my thoughts today. It's Monday. Mondays are challenging at work, and I'm filming this after work, and I have had a bad headache all day, and I've been interrupted 3 times. I had plumbing issues, but I wanted this to be filmed and posted as soon as possible because I want my books to be organized again, and also I just wanted to film it. I've got library books that need to get returned. I've had out for too long, and so I wanted this to get filmed. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me through my ramblings. What are your thoughts? Have you read any of the books that I read? What are your thoughts? Just so you're aware, on The Blade itself, I have more ideas of who my characters are in the Winnie the Pooh world. I know who my Tigger is. I know who my Winnie the Pooh is. I know who my Eeyore is, obviously, because I said it was Glocta. I know who Owl is. I have an idea on who Rabbit will be, but I don't know who Kanga and Roo is, I know who Piglet is, but I don't know who Kanga and Roo is or Christopher Robin. I don't know. I just once I thought Glocta is Eeyore, I was like, now who's going to be the rest? But at any rate, let me know what your thoughts are on the books are. As always, please like and subscribe, and happy reading, everyone.